Greetings all. It's Catherine with Silver Spiral Tarot, and I'm here today to talk about tarot and creative writing, or any kind of writing really, but we'll talk about creative writing tonight. Creative writing, or actually a writing block, was what got me back into tarot after, safe to say, no surprise here, decades. And I had reached a point where I couldn't write. I couldn't write anything. Simple letter. And I had always written. I kept journals. I wrote for a living. But then, the circumstances, whatever, built up a block and I couldn't write anymore. So it was very frustrating, as you can imagine. And I was wandering around a Books A Million store one day and happened into the metaphysical section. And while I was there, while I was browsing around, I saw this book. Oops, I'm going backwards here. Tarot for Writers by Corrine Kenner. And the book, when I looked back, had only been out a little while when I picked it up. I picked it up in 2009. So I only had maybe one deck of tarot cards at the time. And as a matter of fact, I might have bought those at the same time I bought the book. And I did not buy the traditional Rider-Waite, which was the deck that I had used years before. But I thought, okay. So I looked through it and looked through it. And I read through it and it made a lot of sense. And I just could not get anywhere. So there it went, Let's fast forward to May 2017. I'd had it. There have been a lot of changes. Children have moved out, grandchildren have moved out. And I thought, you know what? It's time. It really is time for me to gird up my loins and grab my sword and go after this monster of writer's block. And so I pulled this book out again. And so, as I said, that was May 7th, 2017. Let me think. I will go through what I went through with this book. There was I started out on page 38, where there was a writing practice, and it was choosing 5 characters for your book. And I said, okay, I didn't have a plot, I didn't have anything in mind. But in the meantime, over those 6 or 7 years, I had picked up another deck of cards. I have the cards here. Here we go. I'm never happier than when I'm absolutely surrounded by books and cards. I picked up this Universal Fantasy deck. And it's a Lo Scarabeo deck. And I think it's Lo Scarabeo. It's put out by, oh, it is. And believe me, it is. And I thought, I'm going to sit down and work with these cards. And so I did my first pull. And as you'll see, there is a moral to the story. And I hope you're going to be able to see these cards because they are very intricate. They are very beautiful and they're very intricate. So for my protagonist, I pulled the Queen of Cups. So not your traditional looking Queen of Cups. She's the Queen of Chalices here. For my antagonist, and this is actually one of my very favorite Hanged Men, I pulled the Hanged Man. I absolutely love this one. Talk about a different perspective. And then the protagonist foil. So this is somebody with the Queen of Cups. I pulled this Nine of Pentacles. Incredibly beautiful cards. But remember, I hadn't done anything with cards in a very long time. So the antagonist foil, I pulled the Fool. The Fool reversed. And then for the supporting character, I just drew one for now. I mean, come on, 5's quite a bit. I pulled the Queen of Swords. And of course, she was reversed. Well, I looked at these cards. It was hard. It was hard. I was like, I had no idea. No idea. Now, the illustrations in Tarot for Writers comes from the Rider-Waite. Yes, all of them are from the Rider-Waite. Rider-Waite Smith. Okay. I know I'm looking away from the camera. I'm doing that a lot. Let's stack some things up over here, shall we? So I struggled. I said, oh, this is not working for me. So I had other decks back there. And I went back and picked out some of the other ones. The next one I used was Steampunk Tarot. And this is the deck by John and Kathleen Matthews. And the book is written by Barbara Moore. So here we go. I just laid them. I did not do a new drawing. I just laid these on top of what I originally drew. And so I have the Queen of Submersibles, which of course is water. The suspension tank for the Hanged Man. The Nine of Leviathans for the Nine of Pentacles. The Apprentice for the Fool. And again, remember this was reversed. And the Lady of Airships for the Queen of Swords. Okay. I was not very much better off. As a matter of fact, I was a little worse off. Now, the book that goes with this deck of cards is exquisite. And I really, really liked it. And I did, as I went on for the day, pull some things out of the book. But we're not where I wanted to be. So I had another deck. And I don't know how this deck is going to show up for a different reason. But this is called the Celtic Tarot. And again, Queen of Cups. The Hanged Man. And this is a good place to talk about pip decks. Oh, if you're looking for an image, this might not be it. Nine of Pentacles. The Fool. And the Queen of Swords. This is a really, I like this Queen of Swords. I'm still dealing with this thing. So I said, okay. Interesting, still not helpful. So I went to my last deck and I said, 4 is enough. You don't need any more than 4. And I pulled from the Llewellyn Tarot. Another beautiful tarot. And this one is more Rider-Waite-Smith. So the Queen of Cups, the Hanged Men. Now, I do not care for these Hanged Men. They're different. You know, where is a different perspective? But that's for another day. The Nine of Pentacles. The Fool. Now, I do love this Fool. And another Queen of Swords, a beautiful Queen of Swords. I went through a process and I wrote down Queen of Chalices, and then I took something from each of the sources and looked at that and then put what I felt. And I won't walk you through all of that, but I made little notes, like the Queen of Chalices. My note for me, after reading everything else, was she's receptive, receiving, and an introvert. The Hanged Man, you know, entering deeply into process requires calm surrender. And for me, I said, is he coming for advice, forgiveness? You know, and then I said, I thought I would see you, she said. That came to me. And then the Pentacles. Now, with the Pentacles, this is the card that I fell back on. I came back to the fantasy deck several times, and you can see there's peacock feathers, and there are 9, well, they would be pentacles instead of eyes. But I looked at that, and this is the card that I named the antagonist foil, protagonist foil. That's where I got her name from, was this deck, this card. And she is a confidant to the Queen of Cups. The Fool was reversed, and that one was probably the easiest one for me to think about. And then the Queen of Swords also was reversed. And I thought, what is her relationship? And my note to myself was, mother, other female in the life of Fool reversed, negatively impacts the Fool, and he himself has turned negative. And so those were the things that came. So when you're using a tarot deck and working through a book or a short story or whatever it is, you can write, or if you're just doing a writing exercise, you can write about what you see in the card. And that is really encouraged. My goal was to come up with a paragraph. That's all I wanted. That was how severe this blockage is, or was. And so I went back and I looked at this and looked at it, and everybody was gone. It was absolutely quiet in the house. And I went back, looked at this Queen of Cups again. And what I noticed in this card was there are 2 cups on the table. Is that 2 cups on the table? Right. 2 cups on the table, and she's pouring into a 3rd. Well, that worked out just beautifully. Okay. The Queen in, oops, here we go. The Queen of Cups in the fantasy deck has all this copper color running through it. And I thought, oh, wow, I can do something with that color. And then, of course, nearly all of these fools have a dog. We would expect that, except when they have a cat. Or in the case of this one, has a dragon. Actually, I'm not sure what this beast is, but it's a wonderful beast. I don't know if you can see it. Oops, right there. And so this is what I sat and meditated with. So my little paragraph, if I can still read my own handwriting, Coppelia is preparing for a visitor. Two, in fact. Her good friend and companion, Isis, has noticed that Coppelia is anxious, an unusual state. Has Lucan called her, or has she called him? She doesn't quite remember who initiated, but today she received a note by carrier pigeon. They need to meet. Lucan arrives, and Lucan in this case is the hanged man. Bringing his friend Perry. While Lucan is tranquil, because as we know the hanged man is kind of tranquil, there is an element of energy about him. Perry, on the other hand, is distracted, but his distraction is only partly due to the antics of his little white dog. In his pack is a missive from his mother, and his mother is the Queen of Swords. Okay, that short little paragraph was the result of 3 hours of really working. I had the intention that I was going to write a paragraph. I was going to use tarot cards, and I did it. And the feeling that I had afterwards was, there was relief, absolute relief that yes, I can still put words down on a paper and do something with them. And there was excitement, because I thought, yes, I can do that. So on my little journey here, there was some, I decided, oddly enough, and this was really the getting back into tarot. I thought, I wonder if anybody's done anything like this online. Well, am I surprised? And of course, people have done this. And I'm going to put down in the description box some links to some of the early sites that I found. And this was my introduction to the work of Kelly Ann Maddox, because she is one of them who has done a great 20-minute video on building a story out of tarot cards. So I wasn't through, and I thought I wanted to work on this more. And obviously I was not, believe me, after, all of that work, 3 hours worth of work. But so I fell back into study. And I continued looking at the cards. I continued working with the book. And I found a couple of other books while I was out. One is Mapping the Hero's Journey with Tarot, 10 Days to Finish Your Book, 33 days, I'm sorry, to finish your book. Okay, I can't go with the 33 days. I'm not a witness for that. But this is by Arwen Lynch. Everybody knows who Arwen is. I hope you do. And she has a writing partner. And she talks in here about how she maps the hero's journey. So, of course, I do have a hero with 1,000 faces. So I'm very familiar with the hero's journey. And then I thought, let's go ahead and get writer's journey. Now, this doesn't have anything really to do with tarot. It kind of goes, it's like almost there. But this is an excellent, excellent book. Now, Christopher Vogler is a screenwriter, but or playwright, but obviously it just transfers. So I would recommend this, but Arwen has taken everything that he's done and has boiled it down into this book. And the last book that I picked up lately that has to do with tarot and writing is The Creative Tarot, A Modern Guide to an Inspired Life. And this is by Jessa, Crispin. So if you're having problems doing character building, one of the things that she has for example, she's got the Ten of Swords here, and she has some writing about it. She writes a little bit about what the Ten of Swords is, and then she says, okay, let's not pussyfoot around here. The Ten of Swords is the card of failure, and you can use any new agey mumbo jumbo to try to soften the blow. And now you don't have to believe everything she says. That's up to you. But then she's got, the neat thing is she's got some recommended materials to talk of characters that she thinks or resources that she thinks kind of illustrate what she's talking about. For example, a song, Rock and Roll Suicide by David Bowie. Boy, I wish I had not pulled this one. Let me go to something else. I'm sorry, it's very disturbing and it could be triggering, and I don't want to do that. And that is just so weird that I pulled that. But you know, the card looks kind of weird too. So, oh, okay. The Eight of Wands. So we've got the Eight of Wands. She says, we need input. Not all of the best ideas originate in us. We occasionally need an outside source to tell us what it is we should be doing. The energy of the Eight of Wands has almost nothing to do with us. It is something descending upon us from above. And she goes on. So for this one, she has recommended materials. And this is really, it's not just writing, it's everything. The Lady of Agnew of Lucknow, which is a painting by John Singer Sargent. The Sistine Chapel ceiling, okay, it's a fresco by Michelangelo, just in case you didn't know that. And then a review of A.A. Milne's The House at Pooh Corner, which was in the New Yorker, and it was written by Dorothy Parker. So this is a fun book to kind of meander through and give yourself some ideas. Are you fleshing a character out? Do the recommended resources help? You know, how is this going to help you flesh a character? So then I looked at how can we use these, how do you really envision these tarot cards and your story? What's going on here? That thought was in the back of my mind, but then a wonderful thing happened. My now writing partner had been approached about writing a book with somebody else. And she told me later, it's just not going to work. And I just kept quiet. I keep quiet a lot. Believe it or not, I kept quiet. So and then a little while later, maybe a day or two later, I texted her and said, we should write a book together. It would be a lot more fun. And so she said, what would we write about? I'm like, I don't know. You know, just getting over his writing block thing, you know, I don't know. So then she woke me up early in the morning. Oh, bad idea. But it was by text, which is a very good idea because I can think, I just can't think and speak. And so she said, what do you think about? And she put in a thought. And I was like, oh yeah. So for the next 2.5 hours, we texted back and forth. We didn't talk to each other, we just texted back and forth. And that was the next step in my writing journal. And we have been working on a story since then. That was in August of last year. And we're about a third of the way through it. And we work together. We use Google Docs, and which is really fascinating to watch. She types, I type. She types up here, I type down here, and it switches around. So it's a lot of fun just to kind of step out and watch the process. But in order to get there, once again, we sat down, and this time I used the hero's journey, and Arwen maps out the journey from, does she have an actual map in here? She does character building. If she goes through the layout, why did I think she mapped it out? But she goes through each part of the hero's journey. And let me see how many. So I've got 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. So there are 12 steps in the hero's journey. And she goes through that. So we sat down, drew it out, and for that one, I used my my wonderful, and then I didn't pull the other deck down. I'm not getting up to get it. But for this one, I used, you know, my absolutely beautiful Shadowscape. I love this deck. I love this deck. And we pulled out our protagonist and antagonist and all of that, and we started with this deck to build out our story. Now she was not used to this one, and I did not have a Rider-Waite here at all, and but I did have a Tarot of the Old Path, and so I laid out one circle, and then she, now with this one, we didn't pull the same cards. She pulled her cards and laid them out next to mine, and that was where we started to build. And we took it from there. We did character spreads. We've been using the cards for all of our work, and we don't stay with them. We don't stay with them. If something doesn't feel right, we change it. This is fine. There's nothing carved in stone when you lay those cards down on the table. So we've done that for a year, and then we got together again. Now we do see each other pretty frequently, but we got together again, and we went out to a cottage down by the beach and sat down and worked on the second part, the second part of our story. And the way we worked with that, we did have several decks of cards, and we just posed questions. Where are we going with this? Lay the card down and look at the card. Okay, how is that going to help us with this? Lay a card down. Build it out. You know, you want an outcome. This is where we're going to. What's the outcome? And you know, I just had a ton of cards on the table, and we've got some pictures of this. We took pictures of the spreads. But again, it was this coming at it a year later. I was delighted to find things had changed again, and I was just able to read those cards. I didn't need to refer to a book. You know what? I don't think I might have had 1 or 2 books, but I did not have many books with me. I had more books to just read, and but I was able to just lay those cards out and work from them. You can do it with anything. We had an item in our story. It's a box, and we don't know what's in the box yet. But we do know whatever is in that box is going to affect every single one of our characters. And so I put a card for the box in the middle, and then I went around, for each character and drew a card. How is this going to affect this character? How is this going to affect her? How is this going to affect this character? And it was quite enlightening. And it made sense, where we're going with the story, all of that made sense. So that was very exciting. Telling a story using tarot, it works on a bunch of different levels, several different levels. And I thought, well, as I'm continuing, because I research, that's what I do, I like to research. I continued looking at other resources, and I found two that I would recommend. One, the book is out of print, but it is available, and I bought a used copy. And this is Tarot Tales by Rachel Pollack and Kathleen Matthews. And they did they sat down together and decided that they wanted to write a book and have stories in it that were initiated by tarot cards. So they contacted several different people and invited them to submit a story for the book. And I'm going to tell you, Kathleen Matthews' story in here is amazing, absolutely amazing. It's also probably the more transparent with, as she was going through, I was like, oh, I know what tarot card she's talking about there. I know what tarot card she's talking about there. And it was actually an Irish story that she developed, an Irish beginning story, what do you call those, foundation story, that she developed. So this book has been it was published in well, at least in 89. Yes, all of these stories are copyrighted 89. But this is a great example of using tarot to tell a tale. And not all of these, it's not evident in all of these exactly what they were doing. So that makes it even more exciting because, I don't want somebody reading my book saying, or our book, we don't want somebody reading our book saying, oh, look, well, she's a tarot deck to do that, and this is what she did. No, that's not the purpose. But another book that actually does use tarot cards to tell a story is The Castle of Crossed Destinies. And this is by Italo Calvino. And he's attained worldwide renown as one of the 20th century's greatest storytellers. And this book actually literally uses tarot cards. The opening story is about a castle where that is being giving shelter to all travelers overtaken by night on their journey. And as soon as the people crossed the drawbridge going in, they lost the ability to speak. And so the host let's see. The man who seemed the lord of the castle set a pack of playing cards. They were tarot cards, larger than the kind we use for ordinary games or that gypsies employ for predicting the future, but it was possible to discern more or less the same figures that are painted in the enamels of the most precious miniatures. And so they had the 22 major arcana and all the cups and swords and everything. And so, as you can see here, as they tell the story, right and left, mirror reverse, they go through and pull the cards. So if you're looking to see, how is this done? What can I do? This book is a really excellent example. And this one is a print on demand, by the way. You can get it from Amazon. Tarot Tales I had to get through an independent dealer. And I'm not complaining. So that is where I am in my creative writing journey using tarot cards. And it's really been quite a trip. I really have been enjoying it. And in the description, I'm going to put a couple of resources, several resources, as a matter of fact. Oh, somebody mentioned one of the resources I listened to today mentioned using Lenormand. And I'm not, I have a couple of Lenormand decks that were given to me as a present, but I haven't used them yet. And this person, whose name is Rachel Stevens, and you'll see this video down here, this YouTube down here in the description. She is using the 7th. I went ahead and downloaded it. Oh, the 7th Sphere app on her phone to build out some of her characters. One of the reasons I really wanted to do this video now is because November is coming up. Yes, it's just a few days away. But November is National Novel Writing Month. And this is going to be my first year to kind of participate in there. I'm cheating a little bit because not the story I'm working on with my writing partner. I have another novel that I'm working on, and I've used the cards to map out a beginning for that. Don't do that, Catherine. Map out some things for that story. I am loving that story. Let me tell you about that story. I had gotten my heroine in a tight spot, and I'm like, how am I going to get this? How am I going to get her out of this spot? And I was just, it just wasn't coming. And but I kept thinking about it. I'm not stressing. I'm thinking about it because I have this other book I'm working on anyway. And was lying in bed one morning, and it was very quiet, and that question popped into my head, and then all of a sudden the answer came floating through, and it was the image in a tarot card, and I'll never be able to find it, right? And this tarot card, wonderful card that it is, follows me quite a bit. Let me see if I can quickly find my card. I don't necessarily think that's the reason that it came, it just appeared in my mind's eye the way it did. But it was, in fact, the solution that I needed. I found it. And this Knight of Eels is exactly what I needed to get my heroine out of her predicament. So, I mean, it was great fun writing that scene. And it wasn't a card that I had previously pulled in relation to the book at all. And it just, here it is. And as soon as I saw that in my mind's eye, I was like, I've got it. I know exactly where we're going with this story. So I hope that this has given you a few ideas. As I said, I have like a chapter of the second story worked out. And of course, the rules of National Novel Writing Month. NaNoWriMo are that you're starting from scratch. But you know what? Rules are rules. They're there for a reason. And I don't mind breaking them. I mean, it's not. Nobody's going to say, did you write that? But what it does present is a challenge where you are going to write, or where I, in this case, am going to try to knock out so many words a day for the month of November. And, you know, with a bunch of good old elbow grease and concentration, we'll see if I can get a rough draft of that novel done in 30 days. So we'll see. Maybe we will, maybe we won't. But it certainly will be fun doing it, and I like a challenge. So that's going to be my challenge for November. Well, thank you all for listening. If you have any suggestions about, you know, helping people use tarot with creative writing or any kind of writing, I'd love to hear about it. Please put something in the comments. Let's get a conversation going. In the meantime, have a wonderful day. Walk in peace. Bye-bye.